Okay, I've got some good news, some great news. That performance issue that I was concerned about before, turns out that was just too many separate meshes. So the bottleneck is just too many meshes. So now you can see that the render distance now it's crazy, much farther than before, and we are at 60 frames per second. So this is actually a huge relief, because I was just concerned that this kind of terrain generation was just fundamentally, too many triangles for a typical GPU to be able to handle, and so there was just going to be fundamental limits that we were going to run into. But yeah, as you can see, the performance is good, even with this long render distance. Now, of course, I still want to have a higher level of detail close to the camera, and then this low level of detail, this more flat looking appearance, would just be far away, which is perfectly fine. It would, I think, look very good. But now I'm much more confident that it's not going to have a bad impact on the performance, because this is a very, very long render distance, and it's still running very smoothly. Let me look at the exact numbers here real fast. I'm just curious. So the render distance is 2048. So you can see my position here. So we can see 2048 units of distance into the distance. And the main solution for the performance issue was just to increase the chunk size, because each chunk corresponds to one mesh. Each one creates one mesh. And so if you have too small of a chunk size, then you're generating lots of separate meshes, and it creates a bottleneck because it needs to send them all to the GPU as separate draw calls. So when you have too many draw calls, then that tanks the performance. So right now I have the chunk size is 256, and before it was 32. So I've doubled it again, and then doubled it again. Yeah, it's much larger now, much larger chunks, but now it's not so many draw calls to the GPU, so it is running nice and smoothly. And you can tell the chunks are large because when they pop in the distance, yeah, you can see, wait for it, yep. You can see it's a much larger piece of the terrain that comes in now. So yeah, I think this looks very good. Let's see what it looks like from above. Now that I've increased the render distance so much, now we should be able to fly way further above it. I'm going to try and go back to where that rotating light is. Actually, I think it's too far away now. But yeah, I mean, this looks absolutely fine from a distance. I'm just excited to see what it'll look like once I actually have the mixed chunks, mixed level of detail. And also, in addition to that, I may have come up with a good solution for how the chunks are going to, oh, there's the light, for how they're going to appear together, or how they're going to how they're going to look when they're next to each other. I might have a solution for that issue, because as I mentioned before, if you have a high level of detail chunk and a low level of detail chunk directly next to each other, then you're going to get a seam in between, right on the edge between the two, because the edge will not match exactly, so then you'll end up with holes in the edge there. So my solution that I'd like to try is, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create basically a hook function. Oh, now we're too far. Go back down. So basically create a hook function for each chunk that generates. And, and every time a chunk generates, it'll call this hook. And the hook can be anything. It's basically just a function that you add later. And so I'll add a function there that checks neighboring chunks if they exist yet, because it could be the first chunk that's loaded in, and this is happening in parallel, so that makes it trickier, of course. But yeah, once a chunk loading task finishes, it'll call this hook, which will have a function that first checks for any neighboring chunks, and if a neighboring chunk exists, then it can check the level of detail value of that chunk, and if it doesn't match its own, then it'll call another function which will adjust the edge and make sure that it matches the edge of the neighboring chunk. And that should do it. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And once that's in place, and again, I'm thinking very far ahead here. I don't even have the mixed level of detail chunks yet, and they need to, because of this performance issue that I was just talking about here, they need to fit together in a grid, which is going to be a little tricky, because as you move, as the camera moves, like, I don't know if I can kind of visually demonstrate here. I mean, you see as they pop in, right? If those larger chunks on the edge of the visible terrain are one size, like let's say they're a size of 2, but everything closer to the camera is a size of 1, then when the closer chunks shift by 1, then all of the outer chunks need to shift over by 1. But since they all have a size of 2, they're probably all going to need to be regenerated, which isn't actually too bad, because the scalar field does not need to be regenerated. It just needs to be reused, saved and reused for separate chunks. So that is a tricky issue. That is what I'm dealing with right at the present moment, trying to figure out how to redo some of the logic that I have existing here, because I didn't think far enough ahead, I guess, when I did some of this. Some of it, most of it is good still. I mean, it's not like I have to rewrite everything, but there are some core things, like, for example, the fact that I was using a single value to determine the distance between scalar points in the scalar field. That's a problem, because, I mean, first of all, there's no scenario where you would really want to be able to fine-tune that value anyways, because it's always going to be some divisible value of the chunk size. So it wasn't even really necessary to have that convenience. And even if you do tweak it to be some non-divisible number, or some number that is a non-divisible number of the chunk size, then that's going to create a problem, because then the scalars are not going to fit in neatly into a chunk, and so you'll get chunks that have edges that don't align. So that whole approach was just maybe a bit short-sighted. So now the way I'm doing it now, I've already changed it, and it's now already defined differently. And so now the scalar field is defined using two separate sizes. You have the physical size that matches the size of the chunk, and then you have the number of points in each dimension. So let's say the width is 32 because the chunk size is 32, but you only have 16 points in there, so there's going to be a distance of 2 between each point. Hopefully that made sense. That's just sort of the technical challenge that I'm dealing with here. thankfully, I think that I'm going to keep. I think that's a good solution for the scalar field. That's going to make everything easier. But there are other similar issues primarily with chunks and chunk generation and the way I'm handling all this stuff. It's a little bit. It's not ideal at the moment for keeping everything really dynamic and making it possible to just shift things over as you move, and everything just needs to fit together nicely. And so I need to start thinking about these things as I'm continuing to add complexity. But hopefully I will get there eventually.